Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allan from CDNetworks. So today, we welcome you all for our webinar session to discuss about WAAP and the security posture based from CDNetworks industry and analysis on what's happening on our market from nowadays, right? So today, I'm going to be sharing you about the security, the trend about DDoS attack, web application attack, API attack, which is under the WAAP, which is nowadays a very familiar or very widely talked topic in terms of the security, because it talks about our online and digital presence for every company, for every organization, and even businesses. So from there, we're going to discuss all the findings, including all the mitigation, all the security best practices that CDNetworks will be able to help you to do about this security solution, right? Okay, for background, I just wanted to show first the history on what happened in terms of previous experiences from different companies, from different organizations. As you can see, even long time ago in November 2018, right, there's this attack or exposure of data that happened on the hotel industry, wherein those information of those visitors, hotel, and everyone who stayed on this hotel are the ones affected, right? So we can see, even though after a few years in 2022, there's also the attack on the online digital provider, wherein they are also able to steal information from different accounts that is using their services. And even you look further in October 2022, even the online or e-commerce industry, they are also being targeted by different people or different attackers and different hackers in order to really get those kind of data and those kind of informations that will help them to further do their activities. And recently, also in May 2021, organization in some other countries, especially in Europe, experienced downtime and experienced overwhelmed traffic that's happening on their businesses. So I would say those type of history has been happening or been experienced by those companies any time of the year, any time of the day, and it's been ongoing every time, from time to time, right? So we want to understand from the standpoint of why are they doing this kind of attacks, right? First of all, their motivation will be, I wanted to get those information, those data, maybe their names, address, even credit card numbers, those kind of data that is really pertaining to individual person. In that way, they'll be able to see whether how can further exploit this information that they're having, right? Another attacks or factors behind is the cost or the defense that is really made available or being used by different organizations in order to protect themselves. So security is also sometimes equivalent to money or cost that will make the organization think about how are they going to address and mitigate these kind of things, right? Another purpose or factors behind their, for the attacks is like they wanted to do for their competitors. They want to find out that, hey, I'm a better business and I want to make sure that those users or consumers that accessing the website or your digital presence will be transferred to the other companies instead of yours. So there is sometimes the competition are finding out ways in order to beat the market, right? Nowadays as well, technology has evolved from time to time and new things are coming out, new products coming out. And with that, there are also new vulnerabilities exposed. And sometimes companies and organizations will not be able to cope up or able to adjust to immediately and effectively protect themselves from these new vulnerabilities that's coming in. So all in all, you'll be able to see that the factors and the frequent web attacks have different ways of them to factor in order for them to understand and exploit this kind of security concerns from each of the organization. right? There's different solution in the market and different type of protection that is available for different companies. There are companies that somehow they wanted to protect themselves on premise, right? And they want to buy all the hardware and the resources that they are getting. There's also people who want to maximize their resources, and so they wanted to do virtual appliances, cloud, and also the cloud solutions and services that is available in the market. So there are different advantages and disadvantages for them. It depends on the organization, sometimes on their budget, sometimes on their resources, sometimes the technical people that will be able to help them to run this kind of security and services in their company. So they try to see and what are the best way that can fit on each of the companies that are doing the exercise of having protection and security for their organization, right? There's also different type of protection in the market wherein different attacks, like now is for the DDoS, wherein they're going to overwhelm and do the huge amount of attack on your website or on your application. So this is very damaging and very difficult to manage for those organizations. For example, those SME or growing company that they don't have much capacity or resources to handle this kind of attacks and protection. Yeah. So in 2023, Gartner did some assumption and planning on saying what are the frequent type of attacks and what are those type of attacks that are really prevalent in the market or industry or even the internet right now. So they identified that the application and API protection services will be the one that are most vulnerable because they're always online, they're always available, and they're always can be accessed anytime of the day, any day of the week or the month, right? So from there, we try to see that hence, because of the pandemic and hence on the technology advancement, this type of application and services needs more attention on the security further down, especially for different organizations that is adapting with this development, right? So about the finding, we try to see we are able to capture those information from our system, from our platform, on what type of those attacks and what type of those vulnerabilities that they are working on or being exploited in the internet and in the industry. And from there, we try to come up with some best solution and come up with some best suggestion for everyone in order to cope up with this type of risk. Right, so we have interpreted our DDoS attack data, and what we have here is we found out that there's always a lot of number of attacks every day that's happening. People will not notice, people will, or organization will not see, but actually they're being attacked. Only to find out when they do further analysis, only to find out when they investigate their logs, that's the time they realize that they are really attacked. So for this, we are able to say that there are almost 500,000 incidents per day of this attack or this blockage that we're doing in our platform just for the half of the year only, right? So more and more will happen as now people are going to be online. That means you imagine how many websites, how many applications has been in production every day or every month. And so the landscape and the places that people or those attackers can do is being bigger and bigger. And in terms of the application layer attacks, is also very, very prevalent for everyone, that this type of attacks is like more than 1,000 per day in terms of the application layer. So you might be trying to differentiate that the attack that you are getting is from the network layer, and now they try to also attack the application layer of your platform. In this way, they are getting more sophisticated, they are getting more targeted, and they are getting more knowledge in terms of exploiting this type of vulnerabilities. So for the DDoS attack, we try to find out where are the peak and where are the times that they are trying to do their activities. And usually during the night time, wherein the time that they are much more, I would say, active, and they are much more hard on doing all those activities. Why? Because I think not everybody is working round the clock. They're only perhaps they're doing 9 to 6 o'clock work, and afterwards there are less resources in order to monitor these things. And so they have a higher chance that they will not get noticed, a higher chance that they will be successful on what activities that they're doing. So the more damage that will be able to do to your organization and your company itself. Right, so in terms of the industry, I would say gaming nowadays, like people like to do online and they want to do a lot of entertainment in the internet. So gaming is still a very major industry that are affected. Although, even though they are the highest one, the next or the other industries that are coming are also prevalent, and they're also very active in doing them, because yes, they wanted to exploit and they want to really make a downtime on your services, but you will think as well, what are those valuable information, what valuable data that they'll be able to collect from you. So it doesn't mean that I'm not in the gaming, I will not be affected with this kind of attacks. But somehow, once those attackers or exploiters, they wanted to get the data that you are having, and it's very important to them, that means they wanted to also get those information. So it's just the highlight of where is the one that's they want to have the higher chance, but also those valuable information that they can get, right? So in terms of the web application attack, it's a little bit and slow down, but it's still there. So what we would say is that the industry or the online presence will be continuously going to get this attention for those exploiters and those attackers that are going to take advantage of those vulnerabilities, right? In terms of the choice of attack, this data and what are the type of technology that are more efficient for them to use are highlighted in this page. So you can see the very natural one is the HTTP type of protocol violation, and it's also including some remote file inclusion wherein they can upload the data, they can send codes and modify your information from your server itself. So this type of attacks or this kind of technology that they are using, if you can count of them, there are really a lot of this technology that can be exploited. Now, if you think on the organization type perspective, hey, am I doing enough security protection? Am I doing enough mitigation, whether I'm going to address this kind of attacks that is available on the market, right? Another very famous one is in the finance industry, right? They were targeted because most people or the information that is located in this industry have a high potential of getting a very valid data, very valid information that can be used for some other activities that they can do on themselves, like impersonation, getting your data, maybe getting the other access on your application, even your bank accounts, right? And even your logins for different services that you're going, maybe media, those kind of things. So finance is one, but I would say it will be depending on what will be the valuable information that they can get. So in terms of interpreting the API attack, you can see that companies nowadays, in order to collaborate, work with other companies, what do? They use API. And this API is the one that enables companies in order to collaborate and interconnect their application from one company to another company. And then if the API user has been increasing, you may be also realize how easily the data that is being exposed or being transferred on the API in order to have a much more efficient processing from companies itself, right? So attackers have realized I can easily get the information and it's valuable information, and the API is being a much more realized, important, and very, very confidential that I can collect to. And so people will try to address, sometimes they are not ready what they do is, yes, I can have my API, but whether I do have the protection, enough protection and mitigation for the API, that's sometimes they lack of or they haven't considered during the development or even once they have it in production itself. So the increase from year to year are really a lot, especially now with the integration and the new technologies are coming in. Now also because of the malicious use of API parameters, once they collect this, once they have this information, it's easily to get all those massive data, massive information for them to utilize. Okay, so for the API standpoint, there are different ways that they are doing their API parameters or API exploitation, right? So they employ different tools like scripting, maybe online bots, maybe some other technology like cross-site scripting, and even just disable or paralyze your network in order to work efficiently and properly. So this is significant exposure and significant information that those trying to make their processes streamlined using API must be able to consider by their organization. So the hardest hit areas mostly for the attacks are e-commerce, film, media information, and transportation industry, right? Now that there are online shopping, people are doing their groceries, their shopping online. Of course, if I'm the one who's gonna be doing the attack, then I'm starting to consider, well, where is the highest possibility for me and the highest potential for me to get those interruption or getting the data and information, right? So now you started to ask from your organization, maybe from your company, yes, I know that attacks are happening every day. Yes, we know that we are vulnerable. Yes, we know we limit our organization resources. Yes, we don't have the technical capability, those kind of things. These kind of questions that we'll be asking among ourselves as a company or maybe a technology support, then we try to find out what are the available solutions out there, what is the best fit on my company, what is the most efficient and cost-effective type of solution that I can get, right? So that way, now you find out that the web application and API protection are widely used and is pretty evolving and moving from different places. And the online spread and the online presence are really used by even every country, every organization or industry that is happening. So if the organization is still on the traditional way of doing the protection, they may start thinking, is there a better way I can handle? Is there a better approach that I can do this type of protection, right? So that's where in the web application and API protection came about, right? So how is the web application and API protection differ from the traditional measure, right? So it can have a much more continuous learning, and you can have a real time and much more advanced type of learning of the threat, learning of those vulnerabilities. And they are also very powerful in terms of detecting those malicious traffic, filtering the requests, and blocking those unnecessary requests that are coming on, right? So even sometimes we develop a very secured, streamlined application, right? You have a very good developer, and somehow you're gonna use softwares like web servers, application servers that are vulnerable, and it will take some time in order to catch up in the protection and in all those necessary security settings and policies to be adapted, right? So the common WAAP features that are available nowadays are the next generation web application firewall. It can do protection in terms of the bots and the traffic, and it can also protect in terms of the DDoS protection or even the volumetric attack that will be targeted for your application and websites, right? You also might consider that I wanted to control the access in terms of rate limiting, and protection of the microservices and API, and even considering content delivery networks, wherein it gives you a more capacity, a more extra buffer, a more extra scalability in your infrastructure in order to handle the huge spike of those traffic and requests that's coming in, right? So in terms of like now that you are seeing that there will be a need and importance of having this kind of technology and security protection, right? So for the CDNetworks, we are founded in 2000, and until now, after more than 30 years, we keep on improving ourselves, expanding our capacity, and moving on different industries and different countries. We are able to manage and collect all those learnings, technologies, and softwares that will be able to help companies all over the globe. So for the mission, we try just to have a secure and fastest to deliver our experience for all our customers, right? So our core values is to accelerate and secure and control for the users to find out what are those or control all the environment and make it secure and make it efficient and having a high performance capability. Right, in terms of our resources, we have vast resources globally. We have distributed POPs, we have computing POPs, and we are located on 70 countries and regions and cities, right? And we partner with different ISPs and the capacity as well in order to mitigate those attacks, those information or those vulnerabilities and those scrubbing centers that will be able to help those organizations. Right? We focus on different industries, like not just for gaming, media, entertainment, and financial services. Even the travel and e-commerce or marketing are very important industries for us, although they're not really on the front of the technologies, but they are also catching up because they see the potential and the importance of our companies of having a very secured and a very efficient online presence. And for some of our customers that are we working on for quite a number of years already, and from different industries that we are having engagement with them. So from software, e-commerce, and online gaming and media entertainment are included in our customers and by industries, right? So I want to show you a little bit on the background in terms of what technology. So CDNetworks originally came from CDN, a content delivery network. So from there, we started to just improve the connectivity from users located differently or located on different cities around the globe, right? You may notice that if somehow, let's say the people is in Thailand and they wanted to be accessible outside the country or some other places, you will notice because of the distance, the latency or the connectivity, it's not stable, it's not fast, and it's not efficient. So that's where we come up our technology, improve the network, improve the delivery of your content and website. And from there, we expanded and developed more capabilities, including the security as well. So that's where the cloud security platform that we have enabled and start to put together in order to have the protection for every users. As you can see from this kind of architecture, on the left side are the users, the middle is the CDNetworks infrastructure, and the right side is the origin servers. You may have the primary and origin and the secondary. So what you have here is like you have multiple layers of protection coming from the CDN, starting from the content we're in charge on your performance, and then you have the application shield that helps you to get protected with DDoS and web application or layer 7 type of attack. And then you also have this bot shield and API shield product and solution that can be added on top of the existing infrastructure. So what it does, the value of this solution is that some companies will only just focus on their origin server, and then the rest they just build in terms of their network perimeter security, and after that nothing anymore. Now the question for them is that I didn't realize that I still can increase my protection by leveraging on cloud security by using a cloud-based type solution in order to integrate or compensate on my existing infrastructure. And the good thing about it is that it doesn't need to have, you don't need to buy new hardware, you don't need to plan for your network, you don't need to buy data center, you don't need to buy you add more resources, maybe you have 10 people or more that needs to do this, but just by leveraging on the cloud security platform, it takes out all the burden of the maintenance, the resources that you need from your customers or from your organization, and then use the cloud security type of solution. So it takes out the burden and it helps you to really focus on your business, really focus on enhancing your platform rather than allocating those resources to some other type of solution, right? So for the protection, we believe in multi-layer security technology. So as you can see here, we have tons of features, we have tons of ways in order to protect and talk to the people, or I mean, what I would say is different layers of protection and technologies that we are using from our platform. You might not be familiar that for the internet, you're just using what? Just accessing the internet. But inside, you have layer 3, layer 4, layer 7, and some other protection that is improving. So what I wanted to say that people will see just a security on top of my platform. But actually inside, there are tons and there are multiple ways to mitigate. There are multiple ways to improve or increase my protection by just enabling this cloud security solution, right? So from there, you'll be protected with this layer or this type of attacks coming from attackers. So now comes, there's this application shield protection wherein it focus on web application firewall or layer 7 type of protection, right? We have been improving and incorporating a lot of technology in here, including the rules, intelligent AI, big data analysis, and the engine that will do the analysis of all the traffic that is coming in order to protect the organization before reaching their network. So these included a lot of our resources in order to research, improve, and put all this type of technology for protection, right? So when you talk about WAAP web application, now you find out a different type of attacks or category. You have the DDoS attack. People are also familiar with OWASP top 10, which is really good guideline for everyone. And the good thing about this, sometimes the analysis of the OWASP top 10, not everybody will understand, right? But if the product or the solution is already catering for this type of guidelines, then it will be easier for them to learn and incorporate it in their organization. Another important one is the zero-day vulnerabilities. People or organization, even those software developer team or organization, will take some time for them to create the patches, the updates, and the improvements on their product. So now you left by yourself in order, how can I do my protection on my own without waiting with the other people to come up with their fix or solution? So with this, our organization as well come up with that. We also do the mitigation or the workaround in such a way that we can hold those type of protection, even though other organizations or those software companies haven't released their fixes, right? For the DDoS protection, you may be familiar with all these type of network layer attacks or layer 7 attacks and customized attacks that being exploited on the ground. You may see that there are multiple mitigation that can be achieved, can be leveraged on different places or different technology among the solution itself, right? So for the layer 7, you got the AI protection, you have the machine learning, very, very prevalent nowadays, and a lot of people are leveraging on this machine learning. And we try to do the attack model as well in terms of finding where can we mitigate much more efficiently on those unnecessary requests or traffic. And including for the threat intelligence library, we have a comprehensive database to collect all this to put in as our security policies and rules in our platform itself. So in terms of the WAAP, you can have our base, a CD network rule-based library, and it can be also a user-defined or a customized type of rules. We know that different companies or different application may have different nature implementation. So those kind of technologies may need to have a customized type of rules, which is able to cater and create new rules and user-defined type of policies. And we combine that and become our CDNetworks library or policies in our platform. So there's also other exploit. Recently, I have some discussion with some organization. They find out how come somebody else able to upload or access our content management system. They didn't realize that they already have a backdoor, a web shell access in their platform. So what we can do is really prevent from that happening. They don't even realize that they already infiltrated because they didn't know that it's already within their network. So what we can do is we are better to do it in the beginning rather than we do the cleanup or finding out or investigating how these type of malicious infiltrators came about in your network. So there's also the coin hide mining, wherein they try to use your computer for the users to do the mining of the coin, right, online. So they also find out that suddenly when people access their website, their computers become very high in CPU. And then that's the way they find out that they're being used to do the mining for the coin, right? And ads as well, if you consider that unnecessary ad, take away that possibility, those interaction with your consumers that get perhaps irritated or get confused on engaging on your website, on your platform itself. Another very good way to mitigate is somehow attackers will do directly to your network, right? You want to hide and you want to make sure that you are not exposed on the internet, like sitting duck that will be able to see you and directly attack you. So with this, you will be able to hide and be able to block all unnecessary traffic and just leverage on the network from the CDNetworks and have that traffic mitigated or scanned through or analyzed even before reaching to your network and your servers. So of course, when you have the protection, you also wanted to do the analysis. You want to see the data, where the attacks are coming from, how much traffic that is being sent to my network, to my website. This will help to identify or be able to do further analysis and further improvement either from your application, maybe moving on different application or even increasing your capacity or resources for your application. So this will help you for the data visualization and analyzing those type of attacks and investigating those malicious requests that are coming in. Right, so when you narrow down, you get to find what are the rules, what are the policies, what are the technologies that is included, and how often there will be going to be attacked, and how frequent there will be requests coming in. So this intelligence, this information will give you more time and more visual and more information for your companies to analyze and do mitigation aside from the protection that you're having now. You may realize security is not really a destination. Security is an ongoing type of activities for organization that they need to work in, day out, in order to protect those data and information from their users and from their companies. Right. Okay, so Another type that mitigates for web application and API is a bot mitigation platform, wherein you need to identify what are those that are using scripts or automatic type of attacks, and for the normal users, that means regular users from your application, right? So what you wanted to do is whether they are actually doing the right process, workflow, interaction on your website. I have encountered recently that almost 40% of the traffic for the websites are coming from bot. Imagine if you have 10,000 users that you found out in your website and you say 40% of them are really just automated, and it has affected how you're going to optimize your application, then that could be a very good way for you to mitigate and make sure those legitimate users can do and access your application directly, right? So the key features that you wanted to show is you want to detect how easy or how difficult to detect whether it's automated bot or not, whether a bad bot or a good bot or not. So organization can create script, but the problem now, if you have the script, you need to scale them, install it of different places. You need to find out how much capacity that you can do, right? And those type of like overhead that you need to do because you want to have this protection can be leveraged out of from your technology team or from IT team into using a cloud security bot shield type of solution, right? So in terms of what are those references, in terms of what are those technologies and ways that we can mitigate, you have the library, the fingerprint, human interaction, even the SDK and machine learning are put together in order to analyze the request and detect if this is coming from a bot. So there are more and more technologies and capabilities, and we put it together for our bot shield application. Yeah. So with this, we try to find the library that's best have the collection of those identified bot networks, and we put it in our library in order to have the rich library and rich references in order to find out what are those good bots and bad bots. So not every bots are really malicious. So they are here in order to have a better internet, like the SEO, like they wanted to list out your website, what are the pages and information that is your website is doing. So we can allow and whitelist them in order to continuously update the references and the records they may have in their search engine. Client fingerprint, this is a very powerful detection wherein we find out whether this is a legitimate browser or a legitimate users that is connecting to your network. So with good bot and bad bot, of course, for the bad bot, we will immediately block them and they will not be able to reach out on your origin server, and hence your origin server will have more time or have more processing power to control or manage those legitimate requests, a most extensive request or search in your website, and even booking or shopping online on your website. So we also have this workflow analysis, a very important features wherein they're usually a booking journey or a journey wherein your users are accessing your website, right? This workflow will identify whether it's just a repeating request or just a never-ending type of request sending to you. So we can come up with step 1 to step, let's say 10, and if they deviate from this step, then we'll be able to identify they are abnormal or not legitimate requests. Machine learning, if you have collection of data coming from different sources, from different companies, and also from our platform, we put together and analyze to give up a much more learning and much more knowledge in order to improve those analyses that is being done from time to time. So for bot, we also have the monitoring and detecting the good and the bad bots for those applications that is having online presence, right? There are different type of bots that are categorized, right? There's the simple bot, there are the complex bot, and the advanced persistent bot. All of them have different ways to mitigate, right? Depending on the complexity of your application. So those simple ones can be immediately detected and be blocked, and the others have much more advanced detection to protect those or analyze those requests that's coming from them. Important is the visualization. You can have the analyze, hey, what are they starting to do the bot attack on my platform? What are they trying to gain? You might try to analyze where are they coming from, whether it's from online or which countries they're coming, and what part of my website that they're trying to attack. And then we also have the web application or the API shield architecture. This is really pretty much new and evolving type of technology, since we noticed that all the API are really valuable for the organization and valuable for those companies that are collaborating from each other. So the API somehow, if you have mobile phones, right? Mobile phones doesn't need to go from the browser, and so they use API as well to connect to your application. So with that, more and more, I would say attention, more and more analysis and security should be put in place, because API are very critical for those applications that we are running online, right? So here, there are different ways to mitigate as well, different from last time, the layer 7 for application shield and the bot shield. And then for the API shield, it is much more stringent, it's much more targeted, because when you realize the API is a set of functions, a set of calls that is available for everybody to use and utilize. And sometimes you open it online for everybody to use, although there's this authentication, but there's high tendency for the exploit, and a lot of data would be able to be exposed if we didn't have a very secure way of protecting them. Right, so with the API, the approach is different. We can do some inventory, you can also do discovery, and you can also set those users that can access or have the capability to request data over the API, and even the scope. You may have 100 functions or features, but you want to only allow only 10 per users, or maybe this group of people from marketing or from sales team are allowed on this type of API. And the rest, I don't want to expose it to them, right? In terms of the API, you also have this type of method, compliance in terms of the body, the data, and the parameters. So when you send an API, you send up the parameters, including with your request, let's say your username or the ID or some authentication included. If your API is not validating, is not checking, you may have some exposure or even buffer overflow if they are being exploited in terms of the parameters. So some validation must be done in order to filter out and make sure the data is legitimate or the information is legitimate even before reaching your API server, right? You might also have the traffic control for your API. Sometimes if you open your API with some travel agency, they get all your booking or all the stays in your hotel. And so they keep on asking, on difficult requesting. In order for you to give chance with the other partners or other travel agency to get those information, you may want to limit that traffic and control the access for them. So it gives you a much more flexible way of having control over this type of exposure, over the collaboration or showing off, or I would say showing them the API capabilities that you want to extend for your partners, right? Analysis in terms of which is the most famous or the frequently requested API, and then you'll be able to see how long does it take for this API to process, and you will be able to see maybe I should optimize this API to make it more efficient, or somehow taking all the resources on my API server in order to optimize and better processing of the request itself. So you will see how big is the data being returned, how many rows, how much data or how many lines that is being returned back based from the request on the API itself. We also have this kind of the API consumer control wherein you want to have a private access in terms of the group or partners or some other departments to expose your API. You may have a public, you may have a private one or private to, depending on the permission on the scope that you want to show for the API. So sometimes developers will do the API, they're happy to put all of them together, but they forgot how to segment or they forgot how to group them based on the usage of those people who's going to consume the API. So in this way, you can control what can be accessible, what cannot be accessed by those external parties who's using the API. Another good API detection or protection that can do is like, the example here is like you have an API call, you have a post request method, and you have this URL as the API path for you to send the data and the parameters including for this request. As you can see from the first one, they send a request, but the problem, they send it as GET. So the method for sending is not abiding or following the requirement of the API. So what will happen? Immediately, it will get blocked because it didn't conform. The second request, as you can see, they added another parameter, which is the date, which is from the requirement of the API itself. We don't need the date. You just send these two account ID and order. I'm good already. But since they didn't follow again, we will block it. So for the third request, they added an account ID, but it's not a number, it's a letters. So we try to identify you are using for this type of data, but you send instead a different format, immediately we're going to block you. And for the request for you can see that they have provided the proper way of sending the request, the post, the URL, the account ID, and order ID. Now, this type of intelligence or this type of detection doesn't happen on the origin or the API server. They won't do what they usually do. If they don't know the answer, they immediately give error, right? So if you imagine the error that getting is like, you may expose error message, you may expose that the resources for the server, instead of doing it with the proper request, they are returning for the error or doing the unhandled exception for these API calls. So that give you a much more detection, much more control, and much more protection in your API servers or application. So in terms of the traffic control, the number of requests per day or per minute or per hour is difficult to control it on an API server. So this will help to turn on and make sure you can have a much more targeted settings and much more controlled way of accessing your API. So you don't overwhelm your infrastructure, you don't overwhelm your network, you don't overexpose your API. Another good one is authentication. So for the authentication, this will help you to really validate whether that request or the parameter or the authentication token that is happening from your API are really validated. So this is a very good way of making sure that it's a legitimate traffic and it's not somehow changed or altered throughout the network. So in terms of the support and help, we have a very good team that will be able to guide you and work with you along the way in terms of having the security posture or even just analysis or giving suggestions on your solution or maybe even challenges that is happening in your organization. So we will be able to work together and then journey together in order to understand the requirement. And even after that, along the way, as I said, security is a journey, not a destination. We will be able to join your journey along the way with your security posture in your organization, right? So you may be asking in terms of compliance, we are working with other organizations and other compliance company in order to make sure our platform is safe for every industry that's using. So we have ISO, PSI, ISMS and SOC certification in our platform to have this compliance in order for the companies, making sure that all the data, all the information, and all the organization that is trusting our platform and our solution will have a safe data and information online. Right. So just to recap on my WAP approach, right? There's so much aspect and there's so different ways to mitigate the attacks in your platform. It may be basic now in your organization, but as you go along for months or maybe even years or develop your capabilities, the exposure and capabilities are getting complicated. And you want to make sure you focus on your business, and we help you to have the protection using our cloud security services and our capability for WAP and all the technologies and the scalability and the network that we are having as a CDNetworks provider for WAP protection, right? Okay, so trusted customer is there. So I just want to show in terms of our products, not only on security, we also have the CDN, media, and enterprise application that we can have offer you. So it's more on a complete type of solution in our platform that we can also offer, not just for the security. So if you have any other requirements or if we have any other challenges that we can help you, we will very much happy to discuss it together and work with you closely with it. And with that, I thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Hope you have learned something and we have given you information and good background in terms of the security posture and the WAP security protection. Thank you very much.